Welcome, my dear students, to this tele and radio tutoring with me, your tutor, Atsinyo Sekose. Today's class is for Class 12, and our topic is from the poetry section, that is Let Me Not to the Marriage of True Minds by Shakespeare. You will find it on page 14. So before we look into what this poem is all about, it is important to find out who the writer is or the author is. Why? Because it always gives us clues as to understand the poem better. So we are now going to take a look at the poet's background here. So in your text, at the bottom of the poem, you will find some background information on the poet. And it says here, William Shakespeare was born on 26th of April, 1564 to 23rd April, 1616. Now that sounds like a long time ago, but we are going to find out why we have this in our syllabus. He lived in the Elizabethan era, which is a literary era, that is during the reign of Queen Elizabeth in England. The age is 1558 to 1603. Now, Shakespeare is an English poet as well as a playwright. A playwright is a person who writes drama, and drama and play are the same thing. It can be used interchangeably. And he is also a famous actor. Now, during their time, acting roles are given to only male. So even Shakespeare had taken the role of female characters at certain point of time. So that is a few things on our author here. Now, he is very famous for the work that he has done in these areas, that is comedies and histories, tragedies and romances. I'm sure you must have heard about Romeo and Juliet. So he is the author of that. And he is a master in his art. In other words, he is very good in all kinds of writing. And today, if you look into the curriculum or syllabus of universities, you will find that nobody can do away without Shakespeare. That is the impact that he has on the world literature. And that is why you have 2 lessons on William Shakespeare. So we are going to study it in a very detailed manner today. Now, he is also the most quoted writer. Why? Because he has written almost everything under the sky, and especially about life. So he is one of the most quoted writers. He is also best known for his sonnets. Sonnets we will be discussing in detail later on, and plays. Critics says that he is one out of many, only one of the writer who explored the gray area. We would also be talking in detail about what is gray area later on when we get to the critical appreciation of the poem here. Now, background understanding of the poem. So let's take a look at the poem here. It is, like I said, it is a sonnet, which means a poem that has 14 lines, a poem of 14 lines. It is now Shakespeare has borrowed this style from the Italian, all right? But he has changed it into his own, and this is why his sonnets are very important, because he has created a new kinds of sonnet into the English literature. That is by adding a couplet. We will also be finding out what is a couplet later on. Now, if you look into the poem here, you will find that, in fact, take a look at our topic. It says here, let me not to the marriage of true minds. If we count it, you will find 10 syllables, all right? So that is what we are going to discuss here. This is the unique form of writing that Shakespeare came out with. Now, this sonnet is taken from, in fact, this sonnet is sonnet number 116. Now, Shakespeare has written 154 sonnets, and out of that, 1 to 126 are dedicated to his friend, that is the Earl of Southampton. And the rest, that is sonnet 127 to 152, are dedicated to a dark lady, and so we can here infer that this person is probably a very mysterious person to whom he has dedicated his work. Our rhyming scheme here is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, and G, G. We will be discussing that again in detail later on. So now let's take a look at the poem here, but before we need to find out what are the new words. So these are the new words, and you can also find it in your textbook, which are highlighted in your footnote section. So here, impediments, the footnote 1, which means an obstacle, or in our context here we can also say a struggle, all right? And the next word, tempest, a violent and windy storm. In our context, we can refer it to a point in our life where we are struggling a lot, all right? And the next word, that is sickle. A sickle, I'm sure every one of you is familiar with it. Maybe you have seen farmers using it for harvesting, and it is a tool, it is a very light tool, which is a knife, a sort of a knife for harvesting. The next word we have here is compass. A compass is an instrument that shows direction. Usually sailors use this to chart their route in the sea. And the next word we have is alter. Maybe some of you are familiar with it, but here it means changes, all right? Alter means changes. And the next word, writ, W-R-I-T. Writ here is an archaic word, which means it is a very old word which nowadays we do not use anymore. And it stands for, or it means, write or to write. So let's take a look at our sonnet number 116. What is love according to you? If you look at the topic here, we may not be able to understand what this is all about. In fact, if you have taken a look into your content, you might be wondering, what is this? But this poem is all about love. So in our definition, what is love? Usually, we think that love is something to do with maybe perhaps that pretty girl in your class with jet black hair, fair skin, glossy lip. Maybe that is love to you. Or maybe love is that tall guy in your class, perhaps. Or, so these are our understanding of love. But Shakespeare has given a very different picture of what is love. And that is what we are going to find out today. I'm going to read out, and you may look into your text and follow me. So the poem title is Let Me Not to the Marriage of True Minds by William Shakespeare. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when in alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose words unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickles compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the age of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never read, nor no man ever loved. So that is our poem there. Now, let's take a look at the significance of the title. Like I said, some of you might be confused with the topic here, and suddenly we are talking about love here. So now, it is very important to understand the topic or the title first before you read any poetry. So how can we understand the title better? You look into the words and try to find out what it means here, all right? And if we look into it, words like marriage, all right, or true minds, these things I'm sure are familiar to you. But in our poem here, it is used in a slightly different way, which means it represents many things here, all right? And so now, from one common thing that we can understand here is marriage is not just simply about wedding, but it is also about union, all right? And true, what is true according to you? For many of us, we may have different ideas or notions about what is true, all right? Maybe for you, what is true is, it may be virtue, all right? It may be honesty, faithfulness, and so on. And now, here, mind here is representing intellectual, all right? So we are also talking about a compatible, a perfect union of intellectuality and emotionally as well. If you look at the first part of the word, that is, let me not, here we find that there is some denial, refusal, okay? So the poet is trying to say that I refused to accept any kind of love except the kind of true love that is compatible, that is intellectually compatible, emotionally compatible, and perfect in its sense. So we are talking about an ideal love. An ideal love here means a perfect love. So in other words, the poet is trying to say that do not let me love, or do not let me fall in love at all, for that matter, if not for true love. So that is the significance of our title here. Now we are going to discuss this poem from stanza-wise, from the first stanza in detail. So you may look at your first stanza. The first stanza says, let me not to the marriage of true minds. This line is already in the topic, so I have already explained, which I will not be explaining again. Here, continues to the next line and says, admit impediments. Love is not love. Impediments, we've learned that it is obstacle or an obstruction or struggle. So the poet is trying to say that love is, the idea of love that he is trying to convey here is that of a perfect love, which says that it does not falter, it does not hesitate when it comes across or when it meets struggles. Love is not love which alters when in alteration finds. Whenever changes arrives in our life, and what usually happens is, for many of us, today we may be saying that, oh, that person is really nice, and then the next day you find another person and saying, oh, this is much better. So the poet is trying to say that it does not change, all right? With time, people, with anything for that matter, love is constant. It does not change. Alter here means change. It does not change. Whenever changes come, it does not change at all. Or bends with the remover, to remove. You might want to underline the word remover. So remover here is referring to danger, times of helplessness, and so on, all right? So when such kind of trying times comes, and people who are in love, sometimes they would stop their friendship. So that is not true love. That's what the poet is trying to say here. It does not bend. The kind of true love does not bend towards this kind of circumstances. Now the next stanza, oh no, it is an ever fixed mark. You might want to underline that. It is an ever fixed mark, which means it is permanent. It cannot be removed. It is permanent. It is fixed. And in fact, the poet emphasizes by saying that, by using the word oh no, all right? And the next line, that looks on tempest and is never shaken. So tempest here is referring to a violent and windy storm in the sea. But comparing that to our life, when we come across certain certain period of time when we are struggling a lot with maybe certain things such as problems, or maybe even, let's say, family problems, or the situations around you that can be called as tempest, which can be very dangerous. You know, it can also kill people. This kind of stormy weather can even take life. So when in comparison to that, in our life struggle, if such kind of struggles comes along and then you do not offer love, or you do not love anymore, that is not true love. That's what William Shakespeare is trying to convey here. The next line, it is the star to every wandering bark. You might want to underline the word star and the phrase wandering bark. So see, if we think about it, stars are permanent, and if you look up in the sky, you will find, especially on a clear night, you will find those constellations, you know, the mark of the chart of stars and so on. And for sailors, especially for sailors, when they are out in the sea, their compass and the stars are the only things that guide them through, all right? They look up at those stars to help them give directions so that they can chart their way through the sea. So like that, these stars also represent those things which are permanent in love, and for the two lovers, we can also say, who, whenever they come across any problem, this love provides them consistency and permanent, in fact. Now, wandering bark here, as you have already seen, bark here is referring to a ship or a boat. So likewise, a ship, whenever it gets lost in the sea, like I said, it looks up at the sky to find the stars, and from the stars they can make out this is northeast, this is southwest, and so on. That's how they find their direction. So that is what we are talking about here. Now, so that's how even lovers, when they've come across any problems, or when they are even in separation, physically separated, they are constantly binded together with permanent things like stars. The next line, whose words are known, although his height be taken. Now you need to listen to this very carefully. You may underline words and height. So Shakespeare is trying to say here that love cannot be measured, all right? Love cannot be given a price, okay? You cannot say that I love you 10,000. In fact, some people love to say that, you know, I love you to the moon and back and so on, or I'll bring down the stars and the moon for you and so on. But if you think about it, is that kind of a love permanent? Ultimately, with time, when it gets tested, sometimes we forget about all those things. So that is not true love. So this is why Shakespeare is trying to say that there is no price for true love. You cannot put a worth to it, all right? And you can only, when it comes to height, you can only imagine how great it is. You can only admire its magnificence, all right? So that is what the poet is trying to convey here. Now the next line, love's not time's full. You might want to underline the word time here. For many of us, time may denote different kind or represent different kinds of things for us. For instance, you may think that time is very cruel, you know, time has taken this, or some of you might even say time is a healer. In this case here, the poet is trying to say that time cannot fool love. Now, why is he saying that? Here is the answer. Though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Now, when we are young, we have all these rosy cheeks and rosy lips and cheeks, but with time, we started to grow old. And so the poet is trying to say that even in old age, even if time takes away your beauty, your physical beauty, or if time takes away or weaken you, for that matter, love will still remain, all right? Love will still remain, and that's why love cannot be fooled by time. Within his bending sickle's compass come. Now we already know what is a sickle, that tool that is used for harvesting, and so Shakespeare is comparing time even to sickle, which takes away things, all right? But unlike the time, love will still remain. That is what he's trying to re-emphasize again and again. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks. Love is not only for a brief period of time. It is not, you cannot say that I love you for 1 hour and then you go and say I don't love you anymore. You cannot compartmentalize love into a period of time, or for that matter, hours or weeks, but bears it out even to the age of doom. So it is, like I said, it is constant, it is permanent. So even when there is age of doom, you underline please, age of doom here can be referring to death, all right? Even when there is death, with old age, let's say one of the lover passes away, but the love that they share for each other would still remain. So we have come across words, in fact, an oath, such as, until death do us part. If we take a look at that phrase, it sounds as though the love will end until death do the lovers part, all right? But Shakespeare is not talking about that kind of a love. He is talking about the kind of love that surpasses time, that surpasses even death. Now the last 2 lines, which is a couplet, if this be error and upon me proved, I never read, nor no man ever loved. So now here in the last 2 lines, the couplet, in fact, here the poet is throwing a challenge to the readers or the audience by saying that if what I am saying is not love, I am ready to forfeit or to forego, all right, or to deny that I have written these words. That is the extent of conviction, the faith that he has in, or the belief that he has, that that is what true love or ideal love is supposed to be. So we can say here that it cannot be compared to that kind of infatuation, a short period of time that you fall in love and then the next, maybe in the next few years you forget about it, infatuation, or for that matter, he's not talking about a love that has to do with cheap romance here. He is talking about love that has to do with eternity, that is permanent, that is brave, and so on. So now you may want to note down these points from the first stanza. Stanza 1, points to remember. The poet refused or denied to accept anything less than true love. Anything less than true love. True love does not admit or allow anything less than perfect love, ideal love. Perfect means ideal. So it does not accept anything except perfect, compatible intellectually, compatible emotionally, and the true love withstands the test of time. True love does not change over time, all right? So it withstands all those struggles of life. The next point, true love does not change or fade. It is permanent. True love is permanent. Does not change in the face of danger, hardship, times of helplessness. I'll repeat that. It does not change in the face of danger, hardships, or times of helplessness. Now, in the second stanza, you may want to note these points down. True love here is said to be an ever fixed mark. True love is an ever fixed mark. Ever fixed mark here means permanent. It cannot be removed. It is not afraid of tempest. Like I said, it is not afraid of the storm and stress that comes into our life. It bravely faces hardships of life. It is not afraid of whatever hardships that comes. It is like a star which is constant and guides the lovers. The next point, wandering bark, the star acts as a compass to the sailors in the ship. I think I've already explained that, so we would move on. The next point, The worth here is referring to the value of life or the value of love, for that matter, cannot be measured. Worth. The next point, its worth is unknown. Nobody knows how much it cost, all right? Nobody can say that it is true love is $1 million. You cannot say that. Nobody knows that. It is immeasurable. In the stanza 3, here are the points to remember. True love cannot be fooled by time. True love cannot be fooled by time. Or in other words, you can say it cannot fool love. Young love like infatuation, attraction are not true love, according to Shakespeare. Infatuation, a short period of time of attraction, those are not true love. True love can withstand the damage done by time. You may grow old, but if supposing you find that somebody has lost his or her beauty and then you go and say that, no, I don't love this person anymore, you would find that means that is not true love. But even in such kind of circumstances, true love will still remain. So that's why the poet is saying that true love can stand the test of time. So for example, when physical beauty disappears in old age, true love still binds people. The next point, it cannot be overcome by its sickle or compass. We already know what is a sickle and a compass. Now in the next line here, his here is referring to time, all right? His referring to time. Hours and weeks, referring to a short period of time. For a short duration of time, you love someone and then the next thing you know, you are falling in love with another person. That is not true love. That's what the poet is trying to convey here. The next point, true love is not for a brief moment. It cannot be compartmentalized into hours and weeks. Age of doom here is referring to death. True love remain beyond death. So in other words, the poet is saying that true love is permanent, true love can withstand the test of time, true love goes beyond death. So the last two lines, couplet, these are the points to remember, and these are the lines that you need to underline. If this be error, if this be a mistake or a false thing to say, and upon me prove, then prove to me, the poet is trying to say, I have never written anything, or I did not say anything about ideal love or perfect love, nor no man ever loved. The poet said that if what he is saying, if the description of an ideal love or a perfect love is wrong, false, and error, then he is saying that I have never written any kinds of, or I have never said any kind of things about love. And in addition, he said that nobody knew exactly what love really is. All right? So with that, he challenges the audience or the readers. So the last two lines are very important. Now, Shakespeare's sonnets are very unique and different from the Italian sonnet. Why? Because he has added his own touch, that is the rhyming couplet. The last two lines are called the rhyming couplet, and in this kind of rhyming couplet, in his sonnet, in fact, he always throws a challenge to the readers. It always drives home the point of what he's trying to say. So you may want to note down, the last two lines are very important. Shakespeare's sonnet always have a couplet that throws a challenge to its readers or audience. Error here is referring to wrong or mistaken, you can also say. He insisted or challenged that if anybody can prove him wrong about his definition of true love, then he will forfeit. In other words, he would let go, he would deny his words, or for that matter, even his works. We have already learned that he has written so many works in the literature of English, and he's ready to let go of those kind of things, the age-old treasure of his work. And no man has ever known what true love is. So the next line here, no man ever loved him. Nobody knew what true love exactly is. If I am to be denied, if you are going to say that whatever the definition of love that he has given are wrong. So now very quickly, this poem is all about true love. It is different from the kind of love that we associated with, such as infatuation or romance. We are not talking about that. We are talking about the marriage. In other words, the union of two intellectually compatible and emotionally compatible. So naturally, if they are like that, you will find that they understand each other very well. They do not separate in times of hardships, all right? So that is the kind of love that he is talking about and celebrating. And in fact, he is very sure of this love, that it is the ideal, perfect love, that he throws challenge to the readers or the audience that he is ready to let go of what he had said. And we are able to say such kind of things with conviction only when we are very sure of something. So Shakespeare has convinced the reader with those two last lines. And in fact, if you think about it, when you are really sure about something, you know, I bet my life on it, you would go and say things like that. So Shakespeare is also trying to say that to his reader, because he's very sure that this is the only true love, which cannot be measured, which does not have a worth, in other words, which does not have a price. And we would be continuing the rest of the lesson in the next class. And with that, we have come to the end of this lesson. Thank you all very much for joining me.